So I wanted to take a break from what we've been talking about recently to address something that's been going on my Tumblr. As many of you know, and some probably don't, I identify as genderqueer, or gender fluid. A lot of people have been asking me questions about what this means. It's not a term that's heard that often. In the society that we live in, we have a very strict binary of male or female gender, so a lot of people have never heard this term before. So with all that in mind, I wanted to clear up some questions that I've been getting pretty frequently on my Tumblr lately. So our first question, what is gender fluid? Simplified, a gender fluid person is someone whose gender identity is constantly in flux. For most people, cis or trans, their gender identity pretty much stays the same day to day. For someone who's gender fluid, however, one day they might wake up and find that they're not as comfortable with one identity as they are another. This doesn't mean that they're confused, it doesn't mean they don't really know what they want, and it doesn't mean they're not comfortable in their own skin. It simply means they have a fluctuating identity. So then, what is genderqueer and how is it different from gender fluid? Genderqueer is a much broader term that essentially means anything that isn't in the cissexual binary. Cis meaning the gender and the sex that you were born with are the same. If someone labels themselves genderqueer, it simply means that they don't want to be considered specifically male or female, but the specifics of their identity are up to them. So what pronoun should I use for these people? When in doubt, ask. Really, nobody can determine what pronouns a person's going to use except for the person themselves. So if you're not 100% positive about what to call them, it is not considered rude to ask them. In fact, it's better to ask beforehand than get it wrong and make them feel bad later. So what does it feel like to be gender fluid? This is kind of a hard question for me to answer because I've lived with it for so long that it's not really something that's notable to me anymore. But to answer, I think back to when I was in high school and all of these things were kind of new to me and I didn't have names for anything. And I just knew that there were mornings I woke up and I felt an inherent sense of wrongness in myself. I didn't like the way I looked, I didn't feel right, I didn't feel comfortable when people would call me miss and she, and it just bothered me. So I would do things like pull my hair back, I would wear sports bras that were way too tight on me, I would wear clothes that didn't fit me, all in an effort to send a message about how I wanted to be presented and seen. How I dressed or didn't dress never affected how I felt on the inside. My identity was my identity no matter what, but being able to influence how other people saw me was one way that I felt more comfortable in myself and with the way I was feeling at the time. On the other hand, I would specifically have days where I would wake up and I just felt awesome and I'd want to do my hair and I'd want to wear big makeup, which at the time was a big deal for me because I didn't do it like every day like I do now, but anyway. You know, it was all about dresses and skirts and feeling just good about where I was and feeling hyper feminine, and those days were a lot easier because I already had, that was normal, I guess is the best way I can describe that, that was supposed to be normal. However, most of the time I just felt like me. I know that's kind of weird to say, but most of the time there isn't really a gender that I'm particularly sided with. Most often I'm comfortable in androgyny. I'm comfortable being kind of something different in the middle, I guess. And that's a lot harder of a feeling to describe, honestly, than the specific, like, today I'm a boy and today I'm a girl, because it's always just been me. I like being... Thank you for that. So I started calling these specific gender days my boy days and my girl days before I really knew anything about gender, because that's just how I made sense of them and how I explained them to the very few people I was willing to talk about it with. And then in about my junior year of high school was when I started learning about different gender identities, and I learned specifically about androgynous and genderqueer, which are still identities that I subscribe to today. What I experienced during my boy days and on days I prefer to be more androgynous is something known as body dysmorphia. This is a word that's usually just reserved for trans men and women who feel uncomfortable in their bodies, but it actually applies to anyone that's on the trans spectrum, which I am. It's a hard thing to describe to people who have never experienced it, but as I said earlier, the way I can, I guess, describe it best is an inherent wrongness with your body and the way you feel about yourself. Like, just something that's on the inside is not matching up with what's on the outside and what people see on the outside. Not that being gender fluid or trans means that you don't feel good about yourself or you don't have self-confidence, because that's definitely not true. Most days I'm very happy with my appearance and I'm very confident, and I imagine that there are many, many trans people who are the same way. So don't think that, you know, being trans or being genderqueer equals depression or anything like that, because that's not how it is. Can you choose what gender you want to be that day? Not really. I have tried in the past, like, especially when I buy new clothes for, like, one specific expression. I'm like, yeah, tomorrow I'm gonna be all, you know, dolled up or whatever. But usually it ends up being the opposite of what I'm going for. And, you know, I'd rather just roll with that than try and force something that's not there that day. So, yeah. How does it affect your sexuality? It doesn't. I label myself as queer, which is a lot more broad than some of the other terms. It basically just means not straight, so I can make it whatever I want. And it's also gender neutral. So there are days where I'm like, yeah, I'm a lesbian, and other days where I'm like, no, I'm actually straight, or anything like that. It's just queer. Always, all the time, every day. I don't know what that was. I'm really sorry. So, now the important question. What you got under your clothes? Alright, seriously though, I've actually gotten this question a lot recently, and it's weird. It's weird and it's kind of rude. I know that growing up in a society like ours, we want to categorize things because that's how we were raised. We want to say, okay, they're genderqueer, but really they're male, female, this, that, whatever. And genitals are how we have determined sex and therefore gender our whole lives, because we weren't really taught that it could be any different. That being said, you would never ask somebody who doesn't specifically tell you what their gender is what's between their legs. You would never go up to a stranger in the store and say, hey, I can't really tell. Do you have a penis or what's going on down there? It's actually pretty disrespectful to ask a trans person or a non-binary person their biological sex, because what you're doing is erasing their identity. The only thing that should matter to you, unless you're their doctor or you're going to have sex with them, is what gender they tell you they are and what pronouns they tell you to use. Anything else is irrelevant. And I know humans just have this inherent curiosity, but somebody's comfort should be more important to you than that. Alright, I think that's everything. Those were just a couple of the really frequently asked questions I've been getting recently, so I hope that that cleared some stuff up. I'm sorry this video was kind of touch and go. I kind of wasn't really looking at my script. I was just sort of talking, so it may come out weird. I don't know, we'll see. But anyway, thanks for listening, thanks for sticking around. If you have any more questions, feel free to ask them in the comment box or on my Tumblr. I will hopefully be able to answer them. I've been getting a lot of questions recently, so it's been harder for me to get through them, but I'll try my best. Okay, I hope you guys are all having a good week. Hopefully I'll get back to you next week, but like I said, I can't make any promises, but soon, definitely soon. Alright, I love you guys, and I will talk to you later. Bye.